Empires of the Undergrowth has been officially released for some time now, and it has been a huge success thanks to everyone's support. We also have a lot of new players joining the conquest of the Undergrowth, so here are a few tricks that you might or might not know to help you better command your ant army. To begin with, worker ants in pheromone groups will carry out tasks including dig, build, and brute jobs around the group's marker, and this is especially useful if you want to prioritize certain jobs. For example, if there are lots of pending tasks around the nest and you want certain things to get done first, you can place the marker to pull the workers' attention over to the area. As you can see here, most of the worker ants move over to where the marker is and start clearing out the dirt tiles. The workers will keep working on tasks in the vicinity of the marker, so most of them right now are focusing on building the brute tiles and topping them up with the ant eggs. There's one stray worker ant that was already working on some other tiles, but the majority of the worker ants are now working around the marker, completing the new brood tiles and placing new broods onto them. For comparison, worker ants in the nest group, not assigned to any specific pheromone groups, will be automatically completing tasks around the nest. In contrast, worker ants guided by a pheromone marker will be able to complete specific projects much faster. They are less likely to get distracted and will be mostly focusing on jobs around the marker only. In the unfortunate event where your entire army got wiped or extremely depleted, you can use this trick to focus on replenishing your ranks. The colony needs worker ants to transport eggs to tiles to spawn new ants, which means more worker ants equals to faster ant spawns. Using the marker to prioritize worker spawns first can help you get your workforce back, which can then work on getting your army back. This is especially handy if you have a bunch of existing dig or build orders but you want to pump up your ant number first. The second tip is a cool micro trick that some of you might already know. If you disable attack of a pheromone group, ants can walk past their enemies without getting dragged into combat. You might wonder, why should our ants avoid fighting? Here are some scenarios that this trick might come in handy. When fighting underground, sometimes you'll find narrow passages blocked by enemies, and you need to get behind them to either surround them or access the food sources behind them. What you can do is to disable attack for your pheromone group and place the marker behind your enemies. Your ants will simply walk through the enemies and get behind them. Once the ants are in position, you can enable attack again, and the ants will start attacking their enemies from the rear. This is a good way to spread out your ants and help them avoid devastating area attacks. Because the black ants are not bunched up in a single blob, most of the ants are not affected by the devil coach horse beetle's chemical ability, continuing to attack their targets. You can also use this trick to rush food home in the middle of a fight. Especially when you're playing as the Metabilly ants, your ants would be too busy fighting enemy termites instead of picking up dead termites and bringing them back to the nest for food. What you can do is to split your ants into two groups, one group holding the line and taking down termites, the other group with attack disabled specifically for collecting the spoils of war. If your soldier ants are depleted, you can use this trick to pick up nearby food sources and even dead enemies. Once the food is delivered to your food storage, new soldier broods will quickly spawn, replenishing your army to overcome your adversaries. This works particularly well with non-combat ants as well. For example, the medics of Metabilly ants, if you turn off their combat, the medics will focus on bringing back injured ants and nurse them back to health instead of getting dragged into combat, creating a steady stream of resuscitated ants to re-engage the enemy. Combining with the pheromone marker trick that we just talked about, this might save you in a pinch. When enemies are intruding and your entire nest is at war, you can put the workers in a group with attack disabled and put the marker around the soldier brute tiles. The workers will then avoid combat, focus on replenishing brute tiles, and speed up the soldier ant spawns to quickly get new ants out, holding the line and repel the invaders. To continue with the micro tricks, do you know when you move a pheromone marker, the ants will move to the marker at a fixed rate? You can see the number transferring steadily from the grayed out marker to the colored, fresher new marker. No matter how many ants are in the group, the transfer rate remains the same, so it will take a larger group of ants a long time to get everyone to the destination. If you want to speed up this process, you can split up the ants into different pheromone groups. Two groups of 20 ants each will move twice as fast as one large group of 40 ants. This is especially useful for dodging area attacks, like the Dragantula in Tier 4 for Mecharium Challenge. Splitting your ants into multiple groups help your ants quickly maneuver away from the Dragantula's attack path and avoid getting ran over by the charge attack. It's a bit more demanding on your micro, but I'm sure your ants will thank you for saving them. Now let's talk about logistics. Planning a brood chamber is important in building your army, and there are different ways to plan them according to your needs. A great way to build chambers in early game is to start out with a small chamber. Walls provide one development point, and a hexagonal chamber of 7 brood tiles surrounded by walls can be easily upgraded to tier 2. If you build a big room without enough tiles to fill it up, then some of the tiles will not get supported by development points and cannot be upgraded. But if you build a small room and make sure everything is surrounded by walls or friendly tiles, then you can get tier 2 and even tier 3 ants faster. If you really want to build large rooms, then it will be great if you can start building from the back. This can help your ants move a little bit more efficiently, as newborn ants and worker ants don't have to walk through a bunch of brood tiles that slow them down while walking through the chamber. The leaf cutters in particular can benefit from this, since they don't have to step on the refuse chambers that damage them just to get inside the room to build new tiles. The final thing to keep in mind is to always maintain a good balance between investing food on a bigger army and preserving enough food in storage to replenish your losses. Building and upgrading tiles cost 10 times the food of ant respawns from the same kind of tiles. While getting enough ants to overwhelm your enemies is of course important, it can also drain your coffers. To put things into perspective, here are 30 ants versus 4 adult devil coach horse beetles with 410 food in reserve. While the devil coach horse beetles inflicted significant losses on the black ants, the ants are able to sustain their numbers through the food in storage. By spending roughly 190 food and getting back 38 ants, the black ants are able to wear down their enemies through a war of attrition. In contrast, if we spend most of that 410 food on getting 7 extra ants, we'll run out of food to replace our losses in the middle of combat, and as a result, lose out against the devil coach horse adults. Which is why you should always make sure you have enough food to sustain your army instead of just spending it all on tiles. As for what is a good amount of food reserve, that depends on many factors, including the enemies you're expecting and the type of ants you're using. So there is no definite answer, and you have to figure it out by playing the game. That's all for today's video. I hope you find these tips useful for your conquest of the Undergrowth, and may your colony prosper against all odds. If you just got here and haven't tried out Empires of the Undergrowth yet, then you can find our game's demo with the link in the video description below. Download now and command your very own ant army.